Max Verstappen won the United States Grand Prix. That doesn't sound like news because it isn't really news. He's been winning most races this season, particularly since F1 came back from their summer break. However, we're not here to talk about Max Verstappen, but we are here to talk about the person who very nearly, incredibly recorded the first win of his season at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. I am, of course, talking about Lewis Hamilton. Now, Hamilton was actually leading the race towards the latter stages of it, and if he had been able to outlast Verstappen or outsee Verstappen in the lead, he might just have finally gotten that long elusive first win of the 2022 season. However, it wasn't to be. The car didn't quite have the pace to keep a very dominant Red Bull behind it, and it was Verstappen who took the win. But for a lot of fans, it did bring back memories of 2021, or should I say the good memories from 2021, where the title fight was very evenly contested and where both of these drivers were fighting wheel to wheel in a generational battle. However, that being said, that has been a long time back, and the big worry, if you're a Lewis Hamilton fan, is that he might very well be at the cusp of ending a very long streak. What exactly is that streak? Well, we'll get to that in just a bit. First, let's take just a very brief look at what exactly it is that Lewis Hamilton has been up to through his career. And I'll keep this one brief because, again, most of you would note for a fact that, Hamilton has had a long, impressive career that has featured plenty of highs. Yes, it's had its lows, but if you've had a career this long, it will, of course, be the case. But 307 race entries, 103 race wins, same number of pole positions, 189 podium finishes, and 7 world championships. I mean, there's not a lot that can be said about Lewis Hamilton that hasn't already been said, but if you are summing up this all-time F1 great, there's perhaps no better way to look at it than just the sheer level of success that he has had through his career. Now, beyond that, however, it's also worth noting that these are just very few of his statistical, records. There are other things that he has been, racking up during a course of what has been a very, very impressive career. And 3 of those records actually stand to be, or 3 of those streaks, let's say, stand to be broken in 2022. What are those streaks? Well, as things stand, he's had the most straight seasons, or the joint most straight seasons, where he's gotten at least one Formula One win. He's had 15 of them, stretching all the way back from 2007 to 2021. 2022, he hasn't got a win. Season's not yet over, but it's not far off either. Same can be said about the most number of, he's had the most number of consecutive seasons with a win since his debut year, because again, you remember he made his debut in a McLaren team that was competing for the championship and that might even have won the championship if not for a little bit of bad luck all the way back in 2007. Since then, he's won races in every year. The closest he came to not actually winning a race was 2013, the first year that he was in Mercedes, but even that year he managed to pull out one single win. So that kept the streak going. The third and final of those streaks, which stands to be snapped this year, is the most number of consecutive seasons with a pole position. Because remember, Mercedes have only got one pole position through the season, and that belonged to George Russell. Russell got that pole at the Hungaroring in the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend. Lewis hasn't got a single pole position so far this season, but as I said, that could very well change. Now, let's actually look at why exactly 2022 has been such a year of struggle if you're a fan of Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. From 2014 onwards, which was of course the year that F1 entered the new turbo hybrid engine era, Mercedes have been the dominant team. There's been no two ways about it. From 14 to 21, they've won all Constructors' Championships as well as all but one World Drivers' Championship. They were the team to beat. They were the benchmark. They were the standard. However, so far, for Hamilton at least, this year has been a very poor one, because not only has he not got a single pole position at this point, he hasn't actually gotten a single win. Why exactly is that the case? Well, that's the thing with Formula One regulations, especially sweeping regulation changes that come in like the types that came in 2022. Remember, the 2022 regulations were brought in to make cars more raceable. It also heralded the return of what is known as ground effect cars. And the one team that actually got their car more right than anyone this year was Red Bull, which is why they were able to not just seal the World Drivers' Championship, but have also won their first Constructors' Championship since the 2013 season. Mercedes, on the other hand, have struggled with a car that, in their words, has been a little bit of a diva, that at times has had peaks, but has also had troughs. So it's really been an up and down season for them, and they have actually struggled with the regulations. And even though the car has improved as the season's worn on, it's been pretty clear that for the most part, this isn't really a title winning car. It might win a race, but it hasn't even been able to do that yet, although that hasn't really been for a lack of trying. Remember, they could potentially have won, at least if you're looking at Hamilton, he had 2 chances of winning a race, the first of which came in Netherlands, where of course a late virtual safety car ended up undoing a lot of those hopes, as well as of course, some questionable pit stop calls. Then there was, of course, United States, where Mercedes, to be fair, got their strategy spot on, but the Red Bull of Max Verstappen was just too quick, couldn't be kept behind. So that's 2 near misses. But the real question is, can Hamilton actually make it 16 seasons on the trot where he's won a race? Now, that of course will depend a lot on the races that are left. And now let's quickly take a look at which are those 3 races and why it is I, as well as many others, feel that streak is actually in real danger of coming to an end. So the first thing, of course, is that of all the 3 venues that are left, you have Mexico, you'll have Brazil, and then you have Abu Dhabi. Now, these are the 3 major venues that are left for F1 to race on this coming year. Now, Mexico has been a season where Mercedes have not actually had as much success as they would have liked, even through the era when they were very, very dominant. Because again, you remember that in 2015, this race returned to, the calendar, and 2015-16, it was a Mercedes driver that won. But in 16 was the last, but 17 and 18, you had Max Verstappen and Red Bull take the win at Mexico. The reason for that is that the way the Red Bulls were designed generally tended to favor higher altitude circuits, which is what the circuit in Mexico is. It's at a higher altitude, it's a little higher than sea level than most circuits. So their car has generally fared better. Mercedes, it is also worth noting, only won a race there in 2019 with Hamilton when he sealed the title at that race. But beyond that, he's only won before 2019 and 2016. So it's not really been one of the favorable venues for Mercedes. I'm not expecting that to change, even though Mexico is generally speaking a track where downforce is very important, and the Mercedes W13 has been a car that generally has suited high downforce tracks better. The circuit after that is Brazil, and if you ask me, that is the circuit where they will have the most chance of success and a chance to potentially ensure that Hamilton and Mercedes don't end the season winless. Why? Well, for one, it is a very high downforce track. There's not a lot of straight line speed advantage, except for, of course, that long stretch at the start finish line. Generally speaking, there's not too much in the way of straights, so there's plenty of fast, slow, medium corners. So downforce on the car will be very, very important. And as I said before, the Mercs run best on tracks where the downforce setting is a high downforce one. And of course, it is worth noting they have had plenty of success in Brazil in the past. In fact, last year, remember, Lewis had a very memorable race in Brazil where on the day of the sprint qualifying session, he tore through the field and then he won the race on race day. It was a very memorable win. And of course, for a fact, he enjoys a massive fan following in Brazil as well, who actually treat Mercedes almost as their own team. So he's going to have a favorable circuit as well as a partisan crowd backing him. So that reason, I think Brazil would be the best chance. Now, Abu Dhabi, of course, is also a circuit that is a high downforce configuration, not much in the way of straights. However, the main reason why Mercedes would not fancy their chance at that circuit is because they have a very mixed record there. In fact, 2020 and 2021, both races have been won by Max Verstappen, and in 2019, it wasn't Hamilton, in fact, who won it, it was Bottas. So Hamilton, generally speaking, doesn't favor Abu Dhabi as one of his stronger tracks, and even though it is a track which in theory might suit the best characteristics of the W13, it has also been a circuit where they've struggled traditionally in the past. So there is very much a danger that Lewis Hamilton, who's had such a fantastic career full of so many wins, podium finishes, pole positions in world championships, can be staring at the barrel of a season for the first time in his career where he doesn't actually end up getting a win. It would be very, very shocking if it does happen, especially considering the fact that Lewis Hamilton has been synonymous with success in F1 ever since he made his debut. But that is the nature of elite sport, especially a sport like Formula One, which can actually see new contenders emerge and old contenders fall down the pecking order in the case of, a new regulation change that is sweeping. In fact, you would argue that Mercedes' domination started when there was a major sweeping set of regulation changes in 2014, and it needed a sweeping regulation change of 2022 to actually end that dominance, at least for the time being. Well, enough about how I feel. What do you guys think? Can Hamilton get that all-elusive win, or are Max and Red Bull too strong to actually be beaten anymore this season? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and of course tap that bell icon so you know when it is we're going live or uploading a new video for you guys. Then you can go ahead and follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram too, and don't forget to download the SportsTech app as well. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope to see you all with us on SportsTech through the day, but for now, goodbye.